Good afternoon, everyone. I can't tell you what a thrill it is to sit and have the honor to talk about Sir Sidney. That's how I'm going to refer to him for the rest of the day. I want to start at the end of the film. Be a better human each day, or better than I was yesterday. When I die, I will not be afraid of having lived. That's such a beautiful line.
Yeah.
Would you say it speaks to his spirituality? What defines that line? Where does that come from?
It comes from his parents and his upbringing. First of all, it's about, good afternoon. It's about recognizing that you within yourself has the power to be better today than you will be tomorrow. So that you will try your best to be a better human being. You may not have made it great or made great decisions today, but you will make great decisions tomorrow. So that's from his parents. That's from knowing that he himself, as one human being on the planet, has the choice to be who he chooses to be. Not because someone else has told him that's who he is.
You know, I didn't know the story until I saw the film about when he spoke about being born premature and the family, the father bringing home the shoebox. And did he share that story with you guys? Is that something he talked about? And
yeah, we knew it.
You know?
Yeah, yeah.
Did he carry that? I mean, imagine he did. He carried that with him always. Was that kind of like live for today? You know, how did that affect him?
I think because he knew that how fortunate he was, the fact that he was a premature baby and that he was not supposed to live. I mean, at those times, black people were not allowed to have babies in the hospital. They weren't allowed to go to hospitals. So he was born at home with a midwife, and he was 1.5 pounds. And they didn't expect him to live, so that's why my grandfather went out and got a shoebox, which would be a perfect coffin for him. And his mother, she had such faith and belief in the spirits, in God, that she said, you all stay right here. Put that shoebox away. I'll be right back. So she went out and she found this woman who was a soothsayer, who read tea leaves. And the woman said that your son will not die. That's all she wanted to know. But then the woman continued and said, your son will walk with kings and queens, and he will spread your name all over the world. And that's what he did. So she wasn't interested in the spreading the name all over the world part. She was more interested in the fact that he was going to live. 1.5 pounds, you have to think about, you know, and being born outside of a hospital. Right. That's kind of remarkable. And he knew how remarkable his life was.
Another story he brought up, and I was fascinated because he shared the story about being followed home by the police, and he shared it as if it had happened, you know, a year ago, as opposed to like half a century ago, probably when it happened. Mm-hmm. That story. When did he share that story with you? When did you become aware of that story? How did it affect you?
Well, he never told the whole story, and he never told the truth about the whole story. But the truth of the whole story is that when he went to the woman's house and rang the doorbell, and she said, "What are you doing here, N-word?" She slapped him. And he didn't understand that he's 15 years old. He's 6 feet. He slapped her back. Because he doesn't know, but he knows that he shouldn't be hit by somebody who he's bringing something to, as he was told to do. That's why the KKK was looking for him.
Wow.
So it wasn't until later that I found out the truth of really what happened. So the slapping in the heat of the night,
pretty tame.
But he knew that he, as the actor, and he had it written in his contract that he was going to slap the man back. Otherwise, he would not have done the movie, period.
That's such a powerful moment. I was listening to the reaction of the audience today, Like they call me, I've never watched that movie with an audience where we didn't finish that line, Mr. Tibbs. And I've never watched that movie with an audience without that applause or that yes. You were probably too young when the movie first came out. When were you, do you remember the first time seeing that scene and how did it affect you?
Yeah, well, we didn't see his first movie until I was 12, and it was Lilies of the Field. So that was my first movie that my mother said was tame enough for us to see. And then afterwards, it came to Serve with Love and then Heat of the Night. And by that time, I'm 13 or so years old, and I understood what that meant because I was going to an all-white school in Westchester, New York. So I knew what that meant when, you know, in the playground, the boys would say, "Oh, you're chocolate." And I said, "Well, you're vanilla." And I wasn't intimidated. And I didn't feel as if they were being derogatory towards me. That was a fact. I am chocolate. You are vanilla. So when that slap happened, it was also what I felt that a lot of African American people felt. It's like, you're going to treat me in such a way that I would treat you, human to human. I wouldn't slap you, but you would slap me and expect me not to slap you back. So I understood it totally, and was, you know, kind of the same thing. Yes.
It's clear from the film that his parents were the role models, his shining light.
Yeah.
Outside of that, in Hollywood, outside of them, were there, he mentions Paul Robeson,
Yeah.
were there other role models for him in Hollywood? Because he's everybody's role model, so who was he looking up to?
The shoe shine man at the studio, because they were the only two black people on the lot. And so he had great respect for that man to be able to come to work every day and shine shoes for people who did not even look at him. But everyday people, really. My father raised us to be very respectful of people. Know that the person who runs the elevator, they can be your friend in a hotel because they know everything that's going on. Don't ever put your nose up in the air as if you think you're better than anybody, because you're not. We're all equal. So, other than his parents, I don't think that there were very many people. I mean, he met some great individuals. The Jewish lawyer, or the Jewish waiter that taught him how to read. Those were the kind of people he lauded. And it wasn't famous people, per se. It wasn't anybody who he thought was, oh, look at that person. No, it was really more the everyday person who had more respect and dignity. Reverend Willie, for example, you know, that was a beautiful story that he told. But it was people like Reverend Willie that he really respected and were the beacon for him because they kept him going.
You remind me of something like, and from this film and other films and things I've read about him, people talk often about how he would reject certain roles, wouldn't play certain roles. But I've never heard him speak disparagingly about the people who did those roles.
No, they had an opportunity to make some money and to act and perform, and why would he? You know, the way people talked disparaging about him, why do white people love Sidney Poitier? So he would not do that to somebody else because he knows how that felt.
Do you remember, again, I'm not sure age-wise when that backlash happened, but did you ever feel that backlash when people are like, oh, he's an Uncle Tom or he's this or that? And how did that, because it was heartbreaking when he said, you know, it was lonely because this man had done so much. What did it do to you guys?
Well, for me personally, I did a play at the Lincoln Center that was written by the man who wrote that article. I didn't know it at the time. And he's from Jamaica. And it was a play about race. And he was like a well-to-do Jamaican, light-skinned. And I was like playing a kind of a maid. And he he didn't treat me very well on stage during a scene. And made some comment, oh, I've done more for you than for your career than your father. And I said, my father made me. You didn't do anything for me. And I had to tell the director how disrespectful he was, because that's not cool. So I had personal relationships with these people who were trying to disparage my father, and I knew you can't touch him. You can't touch the hem of his garment. The fact that you would say anything negative about him. Yes. You have no class.
Your mother.
Yeah.
Just elegance personified. I mean, she is.
Yeah.
You mentioned in the film that she was very optimistic and he was very pessimistic.
Yeah.
And just from this, I mean, she seems like she was a force.
Yes.
How did she shape him? Because it almost seemed like she guided him and was, even though she was younger.
Yeah. Well, I think that she was born in Bridgeport, Alabama, first of all. And her grandmother was, I guess what you call in those days, a race woman. She was a cook. And she was a cook at a white hotel. And she believed in her people. So when she decided she wanted to turn this shack in the back of her yard into a library for the town, she needed materials. So she kind of went to the people at the hotel and said, I'm looking for some materials because I want to build a library. They said, oh, Ella, you don't need to build no library. Those people don't know how to read. They don't need to know nothing. She said, okay. She didn't go to work no more. And then they were wondering, well, where's Ella? Where's my food? That's not Ella's cooking. Ella stayed away until she got her materials, till she got her books, till she got everything that she needed, then Ella went back to work. So my mother was raised by women who understood the power that they had, and they would use it. And my mother really believed in black people, period. I mean, coming from the South, and being pretty that she was and looking like Pocahontas in a sense, she was all for the race. So what she taught my dad was about racism in America, because he didn't know racism in America, really. I mean, that incident with the Burdine store was like his first inauguration into what racism is in America. But he didn't grow up with it. So it was not in his fabric. He didn't understand why African Americans had such a hard time in America. And so my mother was trying to help him and break that down for him. And I think that it disillusioned him in some senses, but it also helped him to understand what he needed to know in order to be the success that he was going to be.
I asked about how the negative influence, hearing the negative things about your father, but being young, because I remember I didn't see it in the theater. But man, I remember Buck and the Preacher. When that came on, that was the greatest thing I'd ever seen. I'm Buck. I remember that line. And the films, Let's Do It Again, Uptown Saturday Night. It really was us on TV.
Yeah. Yeah.
How did that affect you guys? Because your dad was the man. Your dad was the guy on TV.
Well, I think for me personally, I visited him a lot on sets, because I was interested in the business, even though he told me don't ever get in the business. I didn't listen. But besides that, I was interested in his directing. I was interested in how he phrased his shots. I was interested in how he covered his shots. So I would always be in the background. I would be on set. I would be watching him and learning from him, and asking questions. We're in the car on the way back home after a long day of shooting, and asking, well, couldn't you cover your shot this way if you turn the camera around that way? And somebody said, wow, she knows what she's talking about. Well, I learned from the best. So I had personal experiences with my dad and learning from him and seeing what he was also able to do for a lot of people of color behind the scenes, because all the makeup people and the graphers and the props people, they were all of color, and they were all of different nationalities. So it was really beautiful to see. And also when I started working for him, I would be a PA. a production assistant, and Daddy was a disciplinarian, trust you me. So I would be sitting on the curb because I'm in locations, right? I'm a location assistant. So there's nothing for me to do. The trucks are parked, everybody's where they're supposed to be, but I'm sitting on the curb just kind of watching and observing. He comes over to me and says, I'm like, uh-oh. Don't ever let me see you sitting. If I'm not sitting, you're not sitting. But I don't care what they do. I care what you do. And you can believe he never saw me sitting again. I'd go in the trailer and sit. I'd go sit in the car. I never sat on the set again. Because I understood the respect that I had to carry of my father's name and of my father's work. So I had a legacy that I had to uphold. And he gave me that. And I trust you. I take that very seriously.
Belafonte jokes, and several times in the film, because in interviews he almost seems like he has no ego.
Yeah.
Okay, I already know what that is. Well, Belafonte made a similar kind of remark to that. What was his ego like?
Well, he was Uncle Harry. And Uncle Harry kind of told it the way it was, in his eyes, the way he saw it. But he was always very respectful of my father. He was always really respectful of us. And I went to school with his daughter, Shari, and we had our differences, like my father and her father. But Uncle Harry would read my report and say, well, why can't you be more like Pamela? That's not the thing to say to your child. But I didn't see that egotistical person. To a certain extent, yes, but it was like that was Uncle Harry. He would come to the boarding school and he would take us out early, and he would kind of joke and kibitz with the headmaster, but we got out early. Everybody else kind of had to stay there. I knew he had an ego, and I know he and my dad, would butt heads together, but I was never really a witness to it.
What about your father's ego?
Oh, well. My father had an ego, but he had great humility. So it wasn't so much about him. He was very sensitive to other people's feelings. And he was a remarkable human being because he could walk through an airport and no one would bother him. He was never mobbed. Because he carried himself in such a way that I'm no big deal. We are all big deals. So, right? That's
Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's the epitome of my dad, So in that sense, his ego was more about his work, his craft, how well he could do it, the imagery that he put out there, but not so much of how great I am. It was really how great we all can be, which is, again, back to the first question. He's going to be better tomorrow than he was today.
And to be able to walk away or be okay with not being the leading man and how that's unheard of. Fame is like a drug, it seems.
Yeah.
But he had this calm, it just seemed like it was no big deal.
No, it really wasn't, because he didn't expect to go as far as he did, considering where he came from, considering the lack of education that he had, that he was self-taught, the fact that America is a racist country. So the fact that he was as successful as he was a blessing. So you're not going to fight it when it's like, oh, no, time to sit down. You're not going to fight that. Why would you fight that? Find other avenues to be creative. Find other avenues where you can have a voice. And he did. And then he wrote, the last book my father wrote was fiction. And it was called Montero Came. And it's a beautiful, wonderful book. And I was so surprised. I said, Daddy, you wrote that? He said, yes. I said, seriously? It's good. He said, well, you don't think I can write? I'm like, no. So yeah, I mean, he found other ways to be creative, which was fabulous. But he was not egotistically driven that he had to be on top again, or he had to be a star again, or he had other interests. He really was curious about a lot of things.
Mm.
So his curiosity kept him going.
The moment in the film where he talks about going back to the Bahamas and his parents seeing the film, that had to be one of the most magical moments in his life. Did he talk about that with you guys?
Yeah, he talked about how when he went back, they didn't know he was coming, and he said he would listen by the window of the house in Nassau, because they'd moved to Nassau, and he would listen to their conversation and just grin at how they talked to each other. It was how he remembered them. And then he would like burst into the house and, oh, my grandmother cried and she hollered and she whooped. And even when she saw the film, she was like, that's my Sidney, that's my Sidney, And it was really endearing to him for him to be able to go home finally and show them his success and show them what he had been doing, that was the reason why he had not been in touch. And be able to put something in their hand instead of the envelope was a big deal for him. It was a really big deal for him. He felt good about that.
So family really, there's this great photo, and actually there was some video of the same day, I guess, with the group photo of the family.
Yeah.
There's a picture I've seen, and he's sitting and his hands are out, and he's got just this incredible joy on his face, surrounded by his family. What was that day like? Because every time I see that picture, I'm so happy because the man has meant so much to someone. I'm like, oh, he's so happy there.
I think it may have been his 90th birthday party, and all of us gathered in LA, and all of his babies were there, and all of his grandchildren, and his great-grandchildren, and his adopted children, and his nieces, and a couple of nephews from the Bahamas. And that's who he was. He really enjoyed having his family around him. He really enjoyed knowing that he brought these people into the world, and that these people are going to carry on some of his legacy. Some of his genes are going to be out in the world. So I think that he was happy. He's really happiest when he is around family, and we're making him laugh, and he's making us laugh, and we're telling stories, Yeah.
And speaking about family, Pamela shared a picture of her home in the Bahamas on Cat Island, which is amazing, and that's, talk to me, share with them some of what you shared with me about going home and homeland.
Well, I live in the bush, literally. My nearest neighbor's a mile away. I live totally off the grid, and when I first went to Cat Island, I was in my 40s. I had never been. My dad didn't take us because he said, oh, the mosquitoes and the sandflies will eat you alive. And I'm like, they have bug spray, right? So when I went, I heard a voice when my feet touched the ground. And I didn't hear the voice in my head. I didn't hear the voice in my heart or my soul. I heard the voice in my ears. And it was a female voice with a thick Bahamian accent. And all she said was, thank God you finally reached. And I said, y'all hear that? They said, hear what? I said, okay, I gotta sit down now. I realized that was my grandmother's voice, my father's mother, who had been dead for 33 years. I was like, okay, thank God I finally reached. So my sense was that she had been trying to get me there for some reason. I was the first one of his children to ever go to Cat Island. And so then we went to my cousin Manette's house. We were staying there for Easter. And we went next door to meet Miss Eula, her next door neighbor. And my cousin, Jackson Burnside, said, did you know Reginald Poitier? That's my grandfather. She said, oh yeah, Uncle Reggie. He was a big muck-a-muck. I said, muck-a-muck? I said, what's a muck-a-muck? She said he was like the mayor, big shot of Cat Island. It's like, my grandfather, wasn't the Hollywood story that he was a poor tomato farmer? I said, well, do you know where the little plot of land is that he used to farm? Little, she said. All this property around here is yours. I said, excuse me? She said, I said, all this proper round chair is yours. Go get a map. You'll see. I stopped counting at 6,000 acres. I said, I'm home. And no one will ever take me from here again. I moved there in less than a year. My dad was like, what do you mean? What do you mean you're living in Cat Island? You're going to live in Cat Island. Is there running water? Is there electricity? Do they have roads? Because when he left, they had none of that. I said, yes, yes, yes. And I don't know. I'll figure it out when I get there. So I've been there 25 years now. I did some couple of television shows and documentaries. I'm a conservationist. I write. I produce festivals. And I'm working on a play. And I'm working on a television drama. So I'm home. I found a home because I believe in generational wealth. And I think that's something that a lot of African Americans don't think of. Our grandparents and our great-grandparents came from somewhere, and they left marks. They left something in the past for us. Start doing your research. Find out what they left. Find out what is behind you that you can use to go forward with. So that's kind of what I did. I found 50 acres that went sea to sea across the northern tip of the island, and I built a house, and I do my farming, organic farming, and I write, and I produce, and I'm gonna be acting again soon, so it's all kind of blessings.
Anything you want to share with us about the film, the effect of the film, what you want from the film, or a desire for the film, what effect you would like to see it have?
I would like to see more students see it. I would like to see more high school, junior high school, and college students see it, because I think that they can learn something from my father. My father has laid down a footpath of how to conduct yourself in this industry. Do not think that you are that good or you are that big that you cannot be brought down. Know that yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, thank you, and please will take you very far. Cussing somebody out ain't making you big. It's making you very small. So my father had a lot of dignity and a lot of self-respect. And I think that a lot of the younger generation need to see that, need to know that. Yeah, you can play around and cuss and fuss with your friends, but when you are in public, you're carrying your parents' name. You're carrying your great-parents' name, your great-great-parents' names. Be respectful. If you want respect, you gotta give respect. Yes. That's all I got to say.
So we all have our marching orders. This is streaming on Apple. Make sure your kids see it. Tell everyone about this movie. Thank you so much. Rob, thank you for having me. This has been amazing.
Thank you.